The temple in Jerusalem has even greater significance to the Jewish people than Mecca does to the Islamic religion. And we all know how central Mecca is to the Islamic religion. Yet how many people realize the centrality and the significance of the temple in Jerusalem to the Jewish faith? Yet who would dare to imagine or even attempt to claim that the Kaaba in Mecca has no relevance or significance to Muslims? And could you imagine Jews taking over the Kaaba in Mecca and forbidding Muslims from worshiping at its central point of prayer? Yet that's exactly the case in Israel, in modern state of Israel, which is claimed to be an apartheid against Arabs. Yet, how strange, in the most holy site of the Jewish faith, Jews are not allowed to pray, not even a silent prayer, not even peacefully. As we all know, myself from personal experience and you. Yet, according to a poll that's conducted by the Yesodot Center for Torah and Democracy, the majority of Israelis are actually in favor of Jews praying on the Temple Mount. We're not talking about building a whole functioning temple here or destroying any Muslim mosques. We're simply talking about the right in a democracy of freedom of religion, especially in a Jewish state or a state that claims to be Jewish. And this certainly doesn't sound like democracy to me. That Muslims are allowed to pray and worship freely in the Jewish most holy site, while Jews are forbidden in their most holy site. Again, imagine Muslims being forbidden by Jews to pray at the Kaaba. Simply unthinkable. Historically, there was no temple in Palestine. According to Yasser Arafat, as reported by Memory.org and the BBC in 2002. I'm here to explain why, despite this baseless political propaganda, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is actually a potential uniting factor between Muslims and Jews in the long run, rather than a dividing factor. As Sheikh Professor Abdul Hadi Palazzi, the Secretary General of the Italian Muslim Assembly, constantly reiterates, the popular Muslim objection or denial of the existence of the temple in Jerusalem has much more to do with a modern political emotional response to the existence of a Jewish state in the Middle East, rather than it has any basis on historical Islamic texts. Yet denial among Muslims as to the historicity of the temple in Jerusalem is not only increasing in popular media, but it's also exceedingly ironic. You see, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is called in Hebrew, specifically the temple itself in Hebrew, is called Beit HaMikdash. And more than ironically, there are numerous references throughout Islamic literature to the Beit ul-Maqdis. Beit HaMikdash Hebrew, Beit ul-Maqdis Arabic. And as is universally known, these are sister languages. Just last week, in relation to Tisha B'Av and warning of the destruction of the first and second temple, Rabbi Yehuda Glick, who was only a year ago nearly assassinated by a terrorist, when he was waiting to ascend the Temple Mount with great publicity and controversy, he encountered there a Muslim lady who was willing to be interviewed. She very calmly and rationally and in a dignified manner represented her faith and stated her belief that there's no reason why Jews should not be allowed to pray together with Muslims at the Temple Mount. Can you imagine the words of the prophet Isaiah actually being fulfilled before our very eyes? That the temple in Jerusalem would be a house of prayer for all nations? Yet that depends on us, if you're living in the real world. As Sheikh Palazzi has asserted, there is nothing in Jewish worship that can be offensive for Muslims from a Muslim Islamic legal standpoint. And nothing in Islamic law prevents Jews from praying on Haram al-Sharif, the Temple Mount. Identify a single authoritative Islamic source as legal proof for this claim.